We hear all the time about misinformation and disinformation, and, of course, here in Australia, we've got this misinformation, disinformation bill coming up. You had the President's Press Secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, most recently trying to claim that videos of Joe Biden were deep fakes and cheap fakes, and that they were misinformation and disinformation, that were lying to you about the real state of the president. Well, we all saw him at the debate on Friday. I think we can all agree they were not cheap fakes or deep fakes. But this is the line now, misinformation and disinformation. It's what politicians use when they want to discredit someone's argument, i.e. facts that they don't like, that go against their argument. Well, funnily enough, Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, has been caught out engaging in misinformation and disinformation herself. She tweeted this: Donald Trump would ban abortion nationwide. President Joe Biden and I will do everything in our power to stop him and restore women's reproductive freedom. Let me repeat that. Donald Trump would ban abortion nationwide. Well, isn't it good that these days we have things like, I don't know, videos, and I'm not talking about cheap fakes or deep fakes, that we can go back to that prove these kind of statements wrong? Roll the tape.
My view is now that we have abortion where everybody wanted it from a legal standpoint, the states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land, in this case, the law of the state. Many states will be different.
So that was April. Donald Trump saying that the states will make their own laws. And now Kamala Harris claims that he will institute a national ban on abortion. It's simply not true. Now, of course, one of the interesting things about the fact that she put it on X, formerly Twitter, Elon Musk's platform, is that these days, when someone puts misinformation or disinformation on X, you can actually go on and make a complaint, and they put a little addendum at the bottom of the tweet or the post or whatever it's called now that points out the actual truth. And Elon Musk himself harnessed this today. He said, when will politicians, or at least the intern who runs their account, which in most cases is probably true, if you check Joe Biden's Twitter account, my God, some of the stuff that's posted on there is just inane. And when will they learn that lying on this platform does not work anymore? I mean, it's just a bald-faced lie. On what basis would she try to claim that there is going to be a nationwide ban on abortion? He's literally never said it.
Because they're shilling for votes, and right now they are desperate for votes, especially after Friday's performance from the sitting president, or should I say lack thereof, performance. But yeah, they're desperate, and they know that nothing harnesses, especially the female fury of the US. We saw this when Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court. I mean, you've just not seen scenes like that for a very long time. This gets people on both sides, whether you're pro or anti, absolutely rabid. And she is trying, by lying, to make women believe that nationwide there's just going to be a complete kibosh on abortions. It is a lie, but she's doing it in order, I guess, appealing to the lowest common denominator who doesn't know well enough. The community note that X then slapped on her tweet literally said, I quote, President Trump has repeatedly said he will not sign a national abortion ban, and had 5 links attached so that if people were questioning the community note, they could click on any number of those 5 links and watch him say it, like we just played for folks watching back home. So it was completely blown out of the water the minute she posted it. But again, if you're appealing to the lowest common denominator, then you're going to get those ropeable people that you're after. But of course, that didn't even stop her from then releasing this completely cringe video, once again trying to appeal to women on the basis of, we're protecting your reproduction rights, Trump's going to take them away.
So what's on your mind? Oh, Madam VP Harris, I'm worried about the election. Women's reproductive rights are on the line. Our Supreme Court is on the line. Our basic freedoms are being tested. Madam BP, I know you've been traveling across the country. What are you hearing?
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets. And let me tell you, you're right, Taraji. There is so much at stake in this moment. The majority of us believe in freedom and equality. But these extremists, as they say, they're not like us.
They not.
There's a full-on attack on our fundamental freedoms.
A full-on attack on our fundamental freedoms. Don't you just love it? The more they refer to anyone who believes differently to them as extremists, I'm like, this is wearing so thin so fast. Nobody believes you anymore.
Yeah, girl, I've been out on these streets and imagine running an administration so bad, failing so epically that your greatest hope for re-election is to boast that you'll be more effective in killing the unborn than your opponents.
Yes.
Well,
Back in March, Kamala Harris proudly announced a historic tour of abortion clinics throughout America, boasting that she was the first sitting president or vice president to actually visit an abortion clinic. And this was her big pitch to voters. There's almost 1 million unborn children aborted every year in the United States. And the best that the Biden administration can do coming up to this election is say, we'll make sure that continues. That's how epically bad they are. It's just a disgrace.
The reporting keeps coming. It's a ferocious speed as we learn that talk in many top Democratic circles has moved on from Joe Biden to now Kamala Harris. There is actually a Google document spreading among Democratic leaders and donors. That's according to CNN. It's making the case for the vice president to replace Biden. They made a document. CNN senior reporter Edward Isaac Devore posting a photo of that Google Doc. You see it there. It's titled Unburdened by What Has Been the Case for Kamala. It's anonymously written by self-described senior operatives within Democratic political institutions. It lays out a detailed argument and plan for a campaign. We are currently losing. We need to do something different to win, it says. And the last bullet states, like it or not, there's one realistic path out of this mess: Kamala. Kaylee, they actually created a document.
I'm sorry, is this from the Babylon Bee? This cannot
be CNN.
Unburdened by What Has Been is literally a meme making fun of Kamala, and yet they're running with this as if it's a serious thing. And, you know, this is remarkable. This is how you know that the Democrats are in a 5-alarm panic, because they're actually thinking about doing this. And to be clear, Kamala makes even Joe Biden look eloquent, which at this point is really saying something. And I think that part of Democrats' calculation at this point is they think that she can help win over some of the demographics that Biden is currently hemorrhaging, including my demographic, Gen Z. They are quite mistaken about this. As I mentioned, Kamala is not taken seriously by any voters, including young voters, because she's not a serious person. And so if they really think that she's going to make up for lost ground, it's just not going to happen. I mean, the bigger problem here is that they have a young voter turnout problem. Neither of these candidates is necessarily inspiring to young voters. In fact, one poll earlier this year found that less than 50% of Gen Zers say they plan to turn out to vote later this year.
So this is a Fox News alert. You are looking at, that's Air Force One there. This is the President of the United States. He's about to get out of what we call the Beast. That's the car that takes the president. He's about to load up on that plane, head to Wisconsin for an interview that could define his life, his future, his legacy, our country. We'll hear him speak in Wisconsin at a rally. Everyone will be watching that. You know, Joe, the rally will have teleprompters, I imagine. The interview with George Stephanopoulos will not, but you've got to imagine a lot weighing on him. You know, he said he needs rest. Look at him. Look at him there. Moving slowly. This is the President of the United States about to board Air Force One. I mean, this is a huge, huge, huge moment.
It is, but to your point, he's going to do this speech and he's going to do fine, because he could still read a teleprompter. The question is, can he speak extemporaneously and put together his own thoughts without a script? And that's what I guess the Stephanopoulos interview is going to reveal at this point. So I hope he's over that cold, right? That's what we were told was the problem. A cold that apparently impacts your ability to remember things and to actually articulate basic thoughts. So But it's just the visual that we're looking at right here. He just looks so slow and so old. And I'm sorry.
Cheryl, let me just get this
is
in
where
there.
we're at.
It is absolutely as you described. But Cheryl, he apparently was asked if he could still beat Trump as he boarded, and he said yes. So he's expressing confidence there. It appears that, and I couldn't tell exactly, those seem to be the full stairs leading up to Air Force One. I wonder, though, as I'm sitting there, because I know the office he's sitting in, I know the couch in front of it. I remember sitting there, and you'd sit across from President Trump, and he would not be so interested in prepping for the rally, but watching the news, hearing what was happening. He'd engage, he'd laugh. I just wonder if they're changing their prep style. Are they going to sit around and prep him vigorously as they did at Camp David? Are they going to let Joe be Joe? What's the strategy?
Well, apparently Jill and Hunter have a strategy, and it is not what happened. They're blaming, of course, his staff and his team for over prepping him for the debate. That's one issue. But, you know, we were talking about this issue with Kamala Harris and the Democrats. I've been told circling the wagons is what I was told. And I think what you're saying happening now is as we talk about a potential VP pick for her, I have to go back to the campaign cash. She gets that. No one else does. James Clyburn. I think that's the first time this week, and you and I were together, Kaylee, on this couch, when I really thought to myself, they're getting ready, they are preparing, they know what's coming, and that is going to be Kamala. Now, this Joe Biden that we just saw go up those stairs has no interest, obviously, yet in stepping down. But I think in a week or two, according to the New York Times, not according to me, to the New York Times, who has spoken to allies, that this Joe Biden knows that in the next week or two, it is make or break. And today could be it, Kaylee.
Yeah, and I imagine his team is hoping he got a lot of rest because, Nicole, you know, as I'm looking at his schedule here, so he's boarding this plane, he's going to Madison, Wisconsin. It looks like it's about an hour-and-a-half flight. He'll get off, he'll go to a rally. Those can be quite strenuous. In and off of that plane at Joint Base Andrews, reporters will be yelling at him questions that he will choose to answer or not. And then he'll go and he'll sit down with ABC. Then he gets back on board and heads to Delaware. It's a long day. It's a long day for someone who's had a long 8 days.
That's right. It's a long day for Joe Biden. But if you contrast that with President Trump, he goes 24/7. I mean, I swear he is like the Energizer Bunny. He goes from one courtroom, unfortunately, because they've completely weaponized the criminal justice system and going after him and attacking him. So he goes from a courtroom. Next thing you know, he's in another state. He's at a rally. He's at another rally. He has the energy of more energy than most 20-year-olds. But I'd like to go back to the Kamala Harris. I think they're also trying to get into the, you know, she's a black female, the first black female president. How would that look, right? But if they were so enthusiastic about her, why were they so reluctant to put her out there? And now they're rallying around her because I think you make a great point, Cheryl. She's the one that has access to the money, and you follow the money where it goes. But look at what she's accomplished. Can y'all think of anything that she has seriously accomplished? I mean, she was the border czar. Do you like what's happening at the border? I mean, I look at the destruction that border has caused, and I think, wow, if that was her greatest accomplishment that she was in charge of, we're in trouble.
Yeah, you know, that is a question, Kaylee, because Biden just said, I can beat Trump. No prognosticator out there of polling is saying that. They just aren't. Wall Street Journal, Trump has opened up his biggest lead ever in the poll. New York Times, Siena, he has opened up his biggest lead since 2015. These are polls, credible polls that are out there. Kamala Harris, I would say there's a question mark because, look, she's trailing Trump in polls. But you put out someone new, the media does a heel turn. Glossy magazine covers, beautiful interviews, Obama's arm in arm, Hollywood, she chooses a moderate governor like Andy Beshear or Cooper down in North Carolina. That's an interesting facade. Trump can pierce it on a debate stage if she even stands next to him. We'll see if she will.
Well, and the big question, too, is whether, as you mentioned, the media would be willing to ask her the hard questions that she should be asked, such as, when did you know about Biden's mental deterioration
Yes.
and why didn't you say anything?
Bingo.
And of course, I don't think that we're going to get those questions from the New York Times or from the Washington Post, but that is the very first thing that she should be asked. And, you know, it's just remarkable because even Trump isn't worried about Kamala Harris. You know, we saw the clip of him on the golf course making a joke about how he actually welcomes a Kamala Harris candidacy because at least it would be more challenging than having to run against Joe Biden at this point. So we'll see what happens. But either way, according to the polls, Trump is leading. Yeah. And it doesn't matter whether it's Biden or Kamala.
You know, you make an important observation, and Mark Levin made this days ago, that we need to ask Kamala about the cover-up. We need to know what she knew and when she knew it. So Mark Levin makes this point, the thought leader in the Republican Party, and then all of a sudden you see mainstream reporters who aren't opinion commentators out there making the same point. Nate Silver, Harris is a pretty good position when Biden drops out. But one scenario it worsens is if she gets swept into a scandal that there seems to be some cover-up of Biden's deficits. Politico, Alex Thompson made the very same point. And I think it's important we go back down memory lane. You remember the Robert Hur reports, the devastating Hur report. It's an elderly man with a poor memory, unfit to stand trial. Let's bring in Kamala Harris.
The way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated. Gratuitous.
She was the validator.
Correct. And as far as putting Kamala Harris in for Joe Biden, let's remember 2019, where she was considered a frontrunner, especially after the first debate. CNN swooned all over her performance that night. And then she didn't even get to 2020, didn't even get to Iowa. She was roundly rejected by Democratic voters. She was polling 5th in her own state of California behind Andrew Yang, right? So you think you put her in and suddenly everybody's just going to coalesce around Kamala Harris. I don't think so, because they didn't the first time around. And again, the top part of her LinkedIn page right now, Kaylee, is borders are and finding the root causes. And what grade should she get on that? Because I'm pretty sure it's below an F.
This really smart colleague of mine, Kaylee McEnany, you've probably heard of her, said yesterday on this couch, that do not discount her. I think we cannot discount Kamala Harris. There is a huge team of people and a lot, like we talked about, a lot of finances, and this party is looking at her and saying, "You've got to save us." You can't tell me that the media trainers aren't going to get called in, that the speechwriters are going to get called in, that you can't tell me right now that Kamala Harris isn't already preparing herself to take on Donald Trump. So I wouldn't discount her. And I will say this real quick: she was on The View, 3 months ago?
Yes.
Look, she wasn't horrible. Okay,
No.
So people can grow and they can change, and I think you need to be careful in discounting.
But she's polling lower than any vice president in history, even lower than Dick Cheney, who literally shot somebody in the face.
But can she follow orders, I think is the question. Because look, when she came out on The View, she debuted a line that to me reeks of being poll tested. And the line was this: it was on abortion. It was, set your personal beliefs and your faith and religious beliefs here, and you can still decide on the side of freedom. It was a line that sounded conservative, though it is not, though I disagree with it, though most conservatives would. She seemed to be someone who was trained. I don't know if she knew how bad he was and knew this could be a real possibility and she went through media training, but we are seeing someone a little different.
Well, and there is the very important factor of the fact that Democratic voters tend to vote blue no matter who. They do have a sort of tendency to coalesce around the nominee, whoever it is. However, I do think that it's important to consider whether the internal division the Democratic Party has been experiencing really since last fall could hamper that. Because we think about, again, let's use my home state of Michigan as an example. Right now, the Democrats don't really have a candidate who can draw the entire party together over the Israel-Gaza conflict. Michigan was the first state where you saw this really large effort to protest vote the Biden ticket. Not just Joe Biden, but Biden and Kamala Harris. The question is whether Kamala would be able to step in and suddenly bridge that gap. Because if you're telling me that we go to an open convention in August and that this whole thing opens up, it's going to be chaos. And I just don't see Kamala being a uniting figure in that situation.
And she stumbles often. And I think you go toe-to-toe with someone like Trump, who knows how to dance across that debate stage in a pretty brilliant fashion. I think that's when she crumbles. So I think if it's her, she doesn't show up for a debate, but we'll see.
Take a look now at this op-ed in the New York Post. It reads, quote, Kamala Harris's desperately youthful pandering is too cringeworthy to be presidential. Ricky Schlott wrote that, and she joins me now. Great to have you here, Ricky. I guess make your case. How cringeworthy?
It was pretty bad. She interrupted the BET Awards with a cameo with a fake FaceTime that kind of had the aesthetic of an influencer behind her. She looked more like a TikToker than a VP. And she dropped slang that seemed very ill-timed and forced coming out of her. And also just randomly referenced a Kendrick Lamar song. So I think this is definitely an attempt by the campaign to balance out the fact that they have a very elderly major candidate. But I don't think Kamala Harris is the person that's going to get the youth vote and get us out there.
All right. Well, you've been busy. You have another op-ed out. This one reads, Gen Z patriotism is at a record low, and no one should be surprised. I mean, why is that? Why should we not be surprised by that?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons. First, just to put a statistic to it, 4 in 10 Gen Zers say that our founders are better described as villains than as heroes. So it's dismal in terms of just the sentiment in my generation. But if you look at the civics literacy rates, it's 22% among current 8th graders. It's even worse for history. Wow. So if you don't know how your country works, its history, why it's so profound that we have the privilege to live in 21st century America, then no wonder you'll be unpatriotic and fall for propaganda on TikTok that's anti-American. I mean, a third of Gen Zers get their news from TikTok, which is a foreign-owned company. So I think social media also plays a role too.
Very quickly, Ricky, Gen Z has become apparently so disillusioned with the economy that 33% of them either know someone who has committed payment fraud or have done it themselves. I mean, what do you make of that?
I found this kind of shocking, but the more that I thought about it and looked into the statistics, one thing that a lot of young people are doing is apparently flagging credit card charges that they know are valid as fraudulent and getting refunds for it. But I think that part of it is the messaging of, you know, for our entire lives, we've been told the economy is stacked against us, that we have no hope, that we're worse off even than the millennials who feel that they're in the worst position of anyone ever before. And so if you're so disillusioned with the economy, why not game the system and get a leg up, I think is really what the attitude is, sadly.
Yeah, what a great attitude it is. Ricky, thank you so much for being here covering.
Bald-faced lie. Bald-faced lie. Shilling. Shilling. Rabid. Rabid. Kibosh. Kibosh. Cringe. Cringe. Ferocious. Ferocious. Eloquent. Eloquent. Extemporaneously. Extemporaneously. Articulate. Articulate. Vigorously. Vigorously. Strenuous. Strenuous. Prognosticator. Prognosticator. Facade. Facade. Deterioration. Deterioration. Gratuitous. Gratuitous. Swoon. Swoon. Debut. Debut. Reek. Reek. Coalesce. Coalesce. Hamper. Hamper. Pandering. Pandering. Drop slaying. Drop slaying. Ill-timed. Ill-timed. Dismal. Dismal. Profound. Profound. Dissolution. Dissolution.
If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date with future videos. Thank you for watching.